Hi everyone, Maria Johnson here. I hope you're having a wonderful day. This is my next installment of the weekly Hot Talk Tips for you. And today is a topic that relates to all of us. It has to do with the groups that we join, networking, how to introduce yourself. Now, how many of us do that on a regular basis? I'm in many different groups, and so I go to these and introduce myself a lot. And I'm often giving tips to people in the group on how to give a better introduction for themselves. So I thought, why don't I go on my Facebook Live and offer some tips around how to do this for all of you. I want to cover three things today: the groups that you join, things to think about, how you introduce yourself at those groups, and then networking. So the different networking events that you go to, which could be in those groups, or it could be some other thing where you have to go around and mingle and meet people. So some tips around that. I'm going to share several points around these that you can take and use immediately, probably later today if you have a meeting. I would love it if you do chime in here, write a comment, ask a question of something that's timely for you, and I will address that in the call. And after the call, if you're watching this as a replay, write a comment, ask a question, and I can follow up or share some experiences you've had so that others can benefit. All right, let's dive in. Groups to join. It's a good idea to be a member of at least 3 professional groups. I'm in more than that, but here are some things to think about. You want to join a group that leads you to your prospect. So it's a good idea to either be in a group that builds your skills on what you're doing and also that leads you to your prospects. And here's what I mean by that. Think about who you're selling to, who is your ideal client, and where do they hang out? This is something that I am often saying to people related to how they deliver their message as well as related to what groups they join. You want to think about, what is it that my ideal client wants? What's the problem they have? And what groups are they joining? What are they looking for? How do they spend their day? Where do they go? That's where you want to go. Those are the groups that you want to be in. And this translates to online. So Facebook, LinkedIn, you want to do a search for the groups that your prospects, your ideal clients are in, and then show up in those groups. Be the expert in those groups. Go in and look for comments that people are talking about and giving that relate to what you do. And then go in and give some value, comment on it. So that's the first thing about groups. You should be in at least 3 professional groups, and they should be where your prospects go. Second thing is, you want to ask, does this lead to sales? I can relate to this question. How many of us are so busy, we fill up our days, but we're not being productive, right? We're not spending time on those things that are revenue producing activities. So you want to join a group that leads to sales. If you're not sure, like I'm in this group, is it providing value? Look back. How long have you been in the group? And when was the last time you made a sale as a result of being in that group? If the answer is no, then that's not a high producing activity for you. So you can rethink that. Sometimes it makes sense to be in a group because of the networking and the people you meet, but ultimately that question is going to be, does it ultimately lead to revenue producing results? So ask that question of yourself when someone's saying, hey, do you want to be on this board, or you should be in this group? Be very judicious with your time, because that is the most valuable asset that you have. Speaking of sales, my resource for this week is a book, not only the book, but the person who wrote the book, David Hoffeld. If you haven't heard of him, he's from Prior Lake, Minnesota. He wrote The Science of Selling, and I've been watching his videos and going to go to a presentation that he's making. He's highly recommended and I just watched a video by Patricia Fripp, who interviewed him and highly endorses him. He talks about the science of selling, and specifically how there's a way that our human minds work as people are presenting information. So there's a series of small consents that people make along the way. It's not like they suddenly get to the end of a sales conversation and then go, okay, yes. There are these mini consents that they make along the way, and then the final yes is just the confirmation of all of the consents and small decisions that they've made along the way. It's fascinating, and it's built completely on the science of how our minds work. So I highly recommend looking that up. David Hoffeld, Hoffeld. He's got a ton of videos on YouTube that you can watch that are really helpful. That is on groups to join. The second area I wanted to cover is on networking. So I've been at a lot of these, especially this summer. So you have end of summer events or a boat cruise or groups that meet during the school year and take off the summer. They might have a either getting back together event or end of summer event. And so I've been at these, several of these over the recent weeks and months because of the summer ending and school starting up. So at a networking event, these are actually really interesting. There is a science to these as well. So you want to scope out the room and get a sense of who's going to be there, and you want to spend time. You want to pick out the people that are going to be the most valuable people for you to talk to at the time. Sometimes you don't always know, so you can approach people or ask the person in charge or the person who brought you, who knows what you do, who would be the people that you think that I should talk to, that I would have the greatest results talking with them, or a really important connection I should make. And here's a tip. As you're talking with someone, here's the question we always get, right? They say, so what do you do? That's the question we all get, and sometimes people just kind of have a blank stare. Sometimes they say it differently every time. Does this happen to you? Do you make up a different introduction every time you're asked this question? If so, then you need to spend some time thinking this through. You need to have a completely practiced positioning statement, branding statement, commercial, elevator speech, whatever you want to call it. The thing you say when someone says, so what do you do? You need to have a 10-second version, a 20-second version, a 30-second version. And then, of course, that leads into longer talks that you might be doing. So you want to be prepared. And this also has to do with my later topic I'll talk about when you give your introduction at a networking group. But specifically just at an event, a social event. It might not even be framed as a networking event, but here's the secret. Every event that you go to is a networking event and a selling opportunity. So if you're not already thinking this way, always have your sales hat on. You go to the grocery store, you never know who you're going to run into, right? So always have that hat on, because you never know where a conversation is going to lead. One thing that I have learned, when you're at these networking events and you're milling around and you're going to talk to people, you always want to be the first person to say, so what do you do? This is a rule that I personally have. So as I'm coming into a conversation with someone and we're doing the introduction and I get a sense that they're about to ask this, I'll interject and start talking with them. Here's why. You want to be the first person to ask this because you want to do some research. You want to ask questions and get to know everything about this person, everything about their business, what they're doing, and where they're having problems. Because the key thing that you're providing in your business is you are providing a solution to their problem. So the more, of course, the more you can find out about what that problem is, what their specific world is like, the language they're using as they're describing it, then you're able to take all of that information and all of that language, and when they're finally done doing this and you've asked all of these exploratory questions, they turn around and then say, so what do you do? And what do you now have? that you wouldn't have had if they'd asked you first. You've got a picture of this person's entire world. So you have a sense suddenly of, you know what problem they're having. You know the goal that they're trying to reach. You know their personality. You know what they've tried in the past. So all of this information is what you take, and then you use that. When they say, so what do? You pull all of that information into it, right? So you can present it as, well, here's what I do. It actually relates to the problem you're having. Or I happen to specialize in exactly that problem. And then give examples of how you've worked with other clients in that way and show them. Also provide value. Give them an immediate solution. So use their language. So you mentioned that you were having trouble doing XYZ. I recently helped a client do this by blah, 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 blah. So what you might want to consider is try this and then give them value. Give them something and they'll think about it and they'll say, wow, okay, that's great. The more you can just keep throwing value at them, the more they start to value what you're telling them, the more they start to trust you, the more they believe and see that you have a solution that's going to benefit them. So that is what I have on networking. The last piece on networking that I wanted to say is, when you are having this conversation and you're sensing that it's getting towards the end, what happens a lot of time is that we just leave it, right? It just kind of ends and nothing happens. So you want to be very clear on having a call to action. Now, you've heard a lot about call to action. You have that in a talk and other situations, but it's very relevant also in networking. So you're having a conversation with someone and you're providing value, they seem interested. And then, you know, there's an announcement, oh, lunch is going to be served or something, or that it's coming to a natural close. You want to be ready and have some sort of action, some sort of follow-up, right? Whether it's, I would love to share more value. We're going to run out of time, and I have so many things I want to share with you that I know are going to help you. When can you have a call this week so I can share this with you? Right? And they'll go, oh, I don't know, and you look at the times, but here's what you want to do. You want to schedule it right then and there. Because you know this, right? How many times do you end up saying you're going to do something, or, oh, you know what, I'll talk to you, let's connect next week and see what works. And that just goes, it just doesn't happen. So you always want to do it right then and there. All right, that's networking. Third thing I wanted to cover is, how many times do you have to stand up? How many times do you do this where everybody goes around the room and does their commercial and introduces themselves, and you kind of watch as it gets around and around in the circle, right? And it's coming at you, and then it's your turn. And so many people have this where it's just, it builds up and you stand up and you're so freaked out that at that point you completely forget what you're going to say. There's ways to get over that. The number one thing you can do is to already know what you're going to say. And that comes from one thing, and that is practice. I literally have taken my phone and I turn on the stopwatch, and I know, all right, I'm going to have 45 seconds to give my commercial. So I literally write it out, and of course write it out in the ways where you are, you're framing it for the audience that you're going to be with. You are showing them the value that you're going to provide, how you're going to solve a solution or a problem that they have. And you're saying it in a way that's unique and different from other people who do the same thing as you. So that's how you want to frame it when you're practicing. And like I said, when I'm doing this, I have 45 seconds, I write it out, and then I practice it. I push start, and I give my introduction, and then I look down on it, and it's like, oh, I'm at 52 seconds. Darn, I got to cut a little bit out. And I keep going and going and going until I get to just under 45 seconds or whatever the time is. The more you do this, the more it's just boom, right at the top of your head. How good would that feel, right? That you don't have to try to come up with it. You've got the words right there. And some people would say, well, I don't like a script. You know, it sounds too formal and like it's too practiced. If you just practice writing it out and saying it, you just have the main concepts in your mind. When you give the actual introduction, you don't actually do it exactly as the script is written. You have a general statement, a general flow that you're going to follow. And the idea is that you embellish or you switch words along the way, but you know, I'm going to say this, and then this, and this, and this. And the practice is what's going to get you there. And you know who these people are who do it, right? When you see these people introduce themselves and you think, wow, that person was just boom, they were on, they caught my attention, they had energy, they spoke to this issue, like you might not even have the problem that they're offering the solution to and think, gosh, I want to work with them, even though I'm not buying what they have. That person has practiced. They have tweaked that statement down to be just on target. So think about that. And also the last thing on that is you also want to have a call to action for your introduction. Now that might sound weird, but at the end of an introduction, you want to offer something for them to do. Even if it's just when you're done with the formal introduction part, just saying, I've opened up some times in my calendar to offer a complimentary session with people, and I would love to have that conversation with you and help set you in the right direction or give you some things that you can use right away. My card is sitting over by the door or whatever it is, and I'll be standing over there at the end for whoever's interested, right? Just like at the end of a talk when you give a call to action. So it's really important. You can make it super, super brief. So practice that. So groups to join, at least 3. Ask the question, is this group leading to sales? Are the activities revenue producing activities? The resource I provided was David Hoffeld. Check that out. And networking, be the first person to ask, so what do you do? So you can ask all the questions, get to know this person's world, and then when you introduce yourself, you can tailor your answer. And the last one was how to give an introduction, do your commercial. You want to practice this. Get it within the time limit because there's nothing worse when that little beeper goes off, right? And you're over and over and over, and some people go way over, and it just takes all the value away from it because everybody's looking at going, you're over, and then they don't hear the message at all. Practice, get the time down, frame it for the audience, offer value in a unique and different way, do something they don't expect, and then have a call to action at the end. Hopefully these give you some great ideas that you can use right away, maybe even this afternoon if you have some meetings. Put on your selling hat. You're always selling, and you're always in different situations coming up that could lead to a connection, could lead to making that person a prospect or them leading you to someone who's a prospect. Hopefully this gave you some good tips and ideas. I would love to hear your thoughts. I would love to hear things that you've tried. If this has been helpful, and if you're watching this after the fact, please leave a comment. What did you find useful? What would you add to share with the group and add value? Thank you so much. I will speak with you in our Facebook Live Hot Talk tips next week, if not sooner. In the meantime, I'll see you on the other side.